Namaskar, good morning, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, welcome. Welcome to this first introductory class. This introductory class of this special series that StudyIQ IAS English has come up with. I am Bhuvan and I once again welcome each one of you who is joining us in this program and again who will be watching us in the days to come. So what's this whole series about? Now, you must have already seen the thumbnail, you must be seeing the image just behind me. Essentially, what we are looking to do through this series is to cover the daily newspaper analysis. Now, there are lots of them again. The choices are aplenty. So what's different about this? Firstly, number one, this will be in purely English language. Okay. This is going to cater to students from across the country, whether you have a Hindi background or non-Hindi background, whatever language is of your proficiency. Essentially, this whole series will deal with all information coming out of the newspapers in English language. That's point number one. Thereafter, what else? So we are going to be dealing with newspaper analysis, not just from Hindu, but also from the Indian Express, and also select few articles that appear in the various publications. So you have Economic Times, Financial Times, some particular article that are published in online portals for science and tech and environment. We will take a look at all of them. Why? Now there must be a specific reason as to why StudyIQ has commissioned this particular series. Essentially, after you have appeared or if you have seen the question paper for this year's prelims, one thing is absolutely clear. What is it? That there is no method to this madness of UPSC. Okay? There is no particular source that you can rely on wholesomely and fully so that you can empower yourself to the best of your capabilities and ability in your preparation for UPSC. Just relying on one source is not a sound strategy. So essentially what we will look to do is to make sure that we give you a comprehensive analysis of not just one newspaper, but articles that appear in different newspapers across a range of topics. We will also look to supplement that with practice questions. Now since we have just finished the prelims, so obviously our strategy will be a little aligned towards the mains. However, there will be prelims questions discussed in each and every class. At the same time, all the questions that are discussed will be made available to you if you so desire. I'll give you the details of where you can connect with me so that you can have access to those questions as well as daily solutions. All of that will be taken care of. So essentially, the whole point of it is to give you an end-to-end perspective on the day's current affairs. Okay? That's going to be our strategy throughout the day. Hi, Frankie. This year's passage questions were similar. Well, Frankie, like I told you, just to again diverge a bit, Frankie has a question here about this year's passages being similar to the kind of passages we had done in the special revision series that StudyIQ IAS had come up with prior to the prelims. And well, Frankie, a lot of that has to do with analysis. A lot of that has to do with the trends that UPSC has. They like to have a certain amount of ambiguity in the questions. So if you look at what we did with the cause-effect relationship, figuring out the ancillary idea, the central idea, all of that, if anyone had followed those lectures, that series, it must have come in handy. So yes, again, not to tom-tom my own thing, but I'm sure all our efforts here align to make sure that whoever watches this video derives the maximum benefit out of it. I don't want to waste your time, neither I want to waste my time. So my whole point of this whole series is that 1 hour compact lecture and we give the maximum tangible benefit to the student. Okay? So coming back to the series now. So like I told you, there will be daily questions, weekly questions. We'll also look at mains questions, prelims questions. Now, how is that again different, you might ask? Well, my strategy for dealing with current affairs is very simple, especially from the mains perspective. What you ought to be doing is looking at particular topics, not just in silos, not just in complete silos, but as a part of a larger web. And that essentially should be reflected through your answers. Your answers should reflect maturity of thought, practicality of application. At the same time, the theory should be concrete. Coupled with good vocabulary, good answer writing, there is no reason why one cannot score to their satisfaction in the mains. However, again, if you go ahead with the prelims perspective, the whole thing of just knowing facts but no opinion, knowing facts but no analysis, then that's going to be difficult. Those are the kind of students who normally find mains hurdle difficult. So that's what I'm looking to do. I'm going to build a comprehensive, holistic strategy for you, give you the analysis that will be helpful for you in the examination. Okay, that's my strategy for this particular series. Now, since this is the introductory class, we will be taking it slow, but eventually the whole plan is that starting tomorrow, every morning for 1 complete hour, we will look at least 5 articles from various dailies, various newspapers, portals, journals, all of those, wherever articles are published. So that research will be done by me. I'll come up with this content that will be useful for you, the questions that will be useful for you. All I ask in return is that you make this interactive, that you give me the answers to those questions, or at least attempt those questions and leave the answers for me to judge or analyze in the comment box below. Okay? So that we can agree, disagree, whatever is it. But then eventually you should be able to develop that sense of argument, that sense of putting forward a thought in a crystal clear manner, rather than it being a bushy cloud of many ideas but no clear, concise thought. Okay? That sense will help you immensely when it comes to the mains questions. Right? Okay. Now that introduction is done, so this is again me, Bhuvan Apurva Jha. I primarily deal with CSAT, IR and geography, and I have extensive experience in public policy during my service years. So that makes me a qualified candidate at least to take on current affairs and help our aspirants, our students with current affairs, which is why starting today, the 30th of May, up until probably next year prelims, is what I'm targeting, that we will continue this series so that this is of maximum benefit. Tomorrow, every morning should be of maximum benefit to you. Okay? So grab your chais, your coffees, and more importantly, grab your copies and pens too, for we will begin this series right now. Okay? Baruj, the timing essentially will be around 9 to 9:15, and we will look to complete it by say 10:05. Okay? Tomorrow, yeah, same time, 9 to 9:15 is what I'm planning. However, if there is any other timing that suits you, let's make the timing important for you. It's your comfort that I'm looking at. So if there's a particular timing, again, all of you like, especially for the English language, let me know in the comment box, the chat box. We will make sure that it happens. Okay? The onus is on me to deliver for you. So whatever is convenient for you, you let me know in the chat box. Okay? All right. So we'll begin this series first. So now what's the plan of action? How are we looking to do this? So what my goal is, like I told you, I'll take a look at the Hindu, Indian Express. Thereafter, I'll also look at Financial Times, Economic Times, and say you have the various environmental portals and journals that come up. Okay? Now, which means I have multiple sources. I'm not just going to be fixating on one particular source. My idea is to give you the most benefit in terms of the wide range of topics that you can make yourself aware about. Okay? So these are going to be my primary sources, and I am going to target at least 5 particular topics per day. Okay? And at the end of the class, we will in fact put forward 5 MCQs or 5 mains oriented questions which have in fact been carefully thought out. You have looked at the way prelims was designed this year. No one expected that particular type of options to be put forward. No one expected it. I'm sure even the most brilliant of minds The market leaders in this particular industry wouldn't be able to understand and probably predict that UPSC will come up with such a drastic solution, a drastic change. But then, that's what. There is no method to this madness. You can get that system out of your head now. That doing this will make me an IAS. No. There's no guarantees. What you can do best is range your incoming information from 5-6 sources. So, for example, very briefly, if you were to look at that cobalt question of Republic of Congo, which was asked in the prelims. Now, many newspapers carried it, but in a single line. All of these current affairs magazines carried it in a single line. Now, in a wealth of information, imagine the kind of information that you have to take in. And so for you to remember that particular part from a textbook would be difficult. Okay, many people have pictorial memory. They remember pictures better, videos better, audios better. So I remembered that question because I had seen a meme, okay, where a small African kid was mining the cobalt and he was like, yes, I'm working to power your EV batteries in a sarcastic manner. So eventually, you see how you have to open yourself to multiple types of information. Every moment, your mind should be open to whatever information you're getting. For example, that orangutan question using the twigs and leaves as tools. Many people saw that answer in a Netflix documentary. You see? So these are the kind of sources you need to have. You need to be just not reading textbooks, newspapers, but also documentaries. Also probably being just open to information will go a long way in making sure that you have at least a holistic preparation. You can't say complete preparation because whoever claims that the preparation is complete for UPSC is either fooling themselves or the samne wala, whoever is speaking to, because there is nothing like a complete preparation now. Okay? Like I told you, that method to madness is the name of the game. Alright? Nalajana, bring Yojana monthly also. We will. We are working towards it. I can assure you that will happen. Okay? Stay connected though. Meanwhile, for the time being, we are starting with this newspaper series in English, which I can assure you will be of benefit to all of those who are not proficient in Hindi, who are probably very good in your native language, but want to understand a concept in English. That's the place you have to be. Every morning, 9 a.m. Alright. So, these are my sources. Okay. Every morning, I'll bring to you news from here. And we will discuss essentially the topic, what's the relevance, the way forward, the prelims perspective questions as well as the mains perspective questions. What I will suggest is maintain a copy, okay? Because in the wealth of information, you need something that you can revise, say in a couple of hours before your mains or your prelims, okay? So you have to prepare scientifically. You can't just look at it as a talk show and then not take away anything from it. So maintain a copy and a pen. Whatever information that you find relevant here, note it down. After the class is complete, probably give 10 minutes for the article, just to quickly revise the whole article and whatever information I have given you, so that it gets solidified in your brain. The main problem students face is of recalling information. You must have understood by now, if you have appeared for prelims, that the information magnitude is immense. How much can this brain remember eventually? So you need to be smart, strategic, and scientific in the way you prepare. Give that, that's a minimum that is expected of you. So maintain a copy and a pencil, okay, or a pen, and thereafter jot down whatever information you find relevant. Okay? Alright, so with that we will begin. So what's the plan of the class now? So firstly, I'll put forward before you a question, okay? A question that will probably be from the prelims perspective. Thereafter, we will dive into the topic. The topic, like I told you, will deal with the past, the present, and the future. Okay? I'll suggest words and terms that you can use in mains to basically show and showcase your proficiency of understanding in the subject. Language matters, especially in mains. Okay? Which is why some candidates score exceptionally well, in spite of not having the information that is probably required, because they're able to showcase whatever information they have in good language. So language does matter, the way you present it does matter, and obviously information is a prerequisite. You cannot bluff your way to the interview. That does not happen. But good language is an advantage. Okay? So we'll jump into the topic, deal with all of these. Thereafter, we'll jump into another question which will be from a different topic, and then we move on to topic 2. Like I told you, at the end of the class, I will be sharing 5 questions. These 5 questions will be available to you in PDF format also. I will be uploading it on my Telegram channel, or if you want it specifically, you can reach out to me on this email ID. Okay, this is my email ID, bhuvan.jha@studyiq.com. Okay, reach out to me, do not hesitate, because the whole point of this exercise is that you should benefit out of it. All right. So we are going to do this. These 5 questions, make sure that you answer the questions in the comment box below. I will be active. I will be taking a look at the comment box, and we will make sure that the growth of information is tangible, that you are able to actually take away from a 1-hour investment early morning that you are doing, rather than just looking at a talk show. Okay? There are several talk shows, but what's important for you is learning, and then application of that learning in the examination in a way that you can score. Okay? That's the whole point of this exercise. All right. So now that you know how we are going to do, what we are going to do, what's the way forward, now we jump into the first topic for the day. The first topic for the day is an article from the Indian Express. But before we come to the article, let's have a look at this question. Again, this question is based on an article in the Indian Express. So we'll take a look at this question first. If you do know the answer to this, feel free to answer. Let's make it as interactive for both of us as possible. So the statements. Since prelims has just gone by, well, it's only apt that we begin with a question on prelims or the prelims format. So consider the following statements. Okay? G7 nations have committed to reaching net zero emissions by 2050. G7 nations have urged emerging economies to reach net zero emissions by 2040. China has committed to net zero emissions by 2070. And India has the largest workforce amongst G20 countries. How many of the statements above are incorrect? Yes? How many of the above statements are incorrect? How would you approach this question? Okay. Now, these are just simple facts that I've chosen. UPSC will obviously not give you such easy questions. Okay. If you're finding it difficult, don't worry. We'll discuss how you would have made it easy. Even if you do not know the answer, how could you have at least gone about attempting it? Okay. So let's look at the first question now. G7 nations have committed to reaching net zero emissions by 2050. Now you know that G7 nations, the most advanced liberal countries in the world, at least they claim to be. So these G7 countries plus the European Union. Okay. So essentially, if you were to just look at the history of G7, and G7 and G20 both have common origins. Okay. In fact, if you look at it, both G7 and G20 have kind of common origins. I'll tell you how. G20 and G7 both essentially began because their finance ministers thought that let's get together and start discussing economic issues, political issues, all of that. Eventually, that was the genesis. So both of the organizations had a similar origin. It was the finance ministers who essentially thought, let's get together and we'll start to deal with first economic issues, whatever economic problems were there at that time, and we'll deal with political issues. In the beginning, this was their aim, their mandate, their approach. Eventually, these two organizations have now gone on into environmental issues too, because obviously any environmental issue has an economic context. Any environmental issue has a human context, which means it will be a political issue. So obviously they have gone into environmental issues also. So they will obviously vocalize on, say, environmental policies, prospects in the future. What should growth look like? What should our goal be? they will start preaching on all of these subjects. Okay? Okay, not preaching, probably vocalizing. A strong word is preaching probably. Okay? So they'll be doing all of these. This is the origin now. Now when you come back to the statement, so in recently you must have heard that in Hiroshima all of these people got together. Okay? All of these countries got together at the Hiroshima summit, and thereafter obviously they said about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, they said about environmental issues, what should cooperation look like, what should Indo-Pacific look like. Obviously, all of them are equally invested in all of these areas, especially Indo-Pacific. Why? Because President Xi Jinping is there. He is not going to be just chilling. He'll obviously want to assert himself there. So this coalition comes and says, okay, we are going to vocalize on all of these things. Okay? So now, what did these nations say? So first thing, what essentially they said was, understand here first, what essentially they claimed was that, well, an increase in temperature, if you just go forward and have a look at this, yeah. So what they essentially said, these G7 countries, at the Hiroshima summit, these people came and said that, well, by 2025, the emissions will be reached. You know, it should be reached. The peak emissions that we're expecting will be here by 2025, worldwide. However, it's 2 years down the line. What can you do right now? Nothing. Not much. So these guys obviously came up with a plan, because when you can't do anything, you make a plan. So what did these guys say? We will have an accelerated agenda. This accelerated agenda that you see here is only for G7 countries. So they have self-imposed this condition on themselves that we as the G7 countries plus the European Union, by the way, is an enumerated member of the, okay, if you see the definition, it's an enumerated member, which means it's not a full member. It's not a full member. But even then the European Union also said, we will also do it. And so they self-imposed that for G7 countries, they will reach by 2040. They will reach net zero by 2040. Now when you go back to the question and have a look at it, so they have, obviously this is wrong, this is by 2040. Now look at the second one. G7 nations have urged emerging economies to reach net zero emissions by 2040. Even if you do not know this statement and this statement, can you for a moment understand that G7, like I told you, are the most advanced liberal countries in the world? Okay? Claim to be the most advanced technologically, liberal democracy, all of that they will be claimed by them. So, can emerging economies be expected to do it faster than them? Would that be a fair thing to do? For example, say South Africa, Brazil, all of these countries can be categorized, Indonesia, emerging economies, still growing. Can they be expected to do it faster than these rich countries? No. So which means this is incorrect. So what is the deadline for the emerging economies? Well, they have to do it by 2050. First, the G7 does it, then the other countries do it, the emerging economies. Right? Now, next statement. China has committed to net zero emissions by 2070. Well, obviously you know that China right now is at an inherent advantage economically as compared to India. You know that India has to do it by 2070. That's what Honorable Prime Minister claimed. He said that we will be getting to net zero emissions by 2070. Zero. Okay? Which is why if you just consider for a moment, you must have heard of this green electrification drive of the Indian Railways. That they have done extensively. Everywhere it is electrified now, except for a small part near the Konkan coast and northeast. Why? Because again, hilly terrain, that's still in development. Okay? So which is why Indian Railways has started this whole movement that if we have to reach by 2070, well, we have to start now. Who is the largest polluter in terms of the government side? Well, Indian Railways. So they have started this and they have reached very close to it. So these are Indian actions to make sure that we have net zero emissions by 2070. Right? So, if India is to do by 2070, China, given that it is economically better than India, technologically better than India. Well, obviously, they can't do it at the same speed, which means China has to do it by 2060. This statement is also incorrect. Obviously, this is also incorrect. Okay. India has the largest workforce in agriculture amongst G20 countries. This is obviously, yes, true. G20 does not include the Red Dragon. President Xi Jinping, it does not include him. And G20, obviously, India has the largest workforce, which is why it is said that because of climate change, Indian agriculture is at the most threat. Okay. That essentially it will have to quickly adapt and mitigate itself in preparation for climate change. So it's essential that you understand the ramifications, the long-term ramifications of climate change on Indian agriculture. If our agriculture is compromised, essentially our food security is compromised, our nutrition is compromised, okay? Our whole conversation around UPSC, whichever questions you must have seen, stunting, compromised, growth, compromised, social, political, human capital investment, compromised. So which is why Indian agriculture is of tantamount importance, paramount importance for the country. You cannot compromise there. Like if just think for a moment that if the monsoons fail, straight away you see the effects of that on the economy. Straight away you see that the government rushes in to help the farmers. Why? Because it's the backbone. So many people involved in a particular sector, and with climate change now happening, India is at a precarious position. It needs to essentially make sure that it is well fortified for the future, in preparation for the future. Okay? So when we go forward now, let's have a look here. So China has committed by 2060. India obviously behind China because we are still not there in terms of comparison, say economically, technologically. So we have done by 2070. So you don't need to remember dates, guys. All you need to do is remember, well, what would be the common flow? What would be the logical sequence of this adoption of change? Should poor countries adopt first? No, how can they? It should be the rich countries that should lead by example, which is why the G7 comes in with this accelerated agenda. Now, the question for prelims. Accelerated agenda is related to which of the following organizations? G20, G7, IMF, U. Something like that. So you should firstly, the takeaways for you. Accelerated agenda is to do with G7. They are expected to do it first, then the emerging economies, China then, and then finally India. The order. Takeaway 1. Okay. Now, the World Meteorological Organization, it has forecast that the global temperatures will increase by up to from 1.1 to 1.8 between these 4 years. Again, another question that could be framed by the UPSC, which of the following organizations has predicted an increase or is responsible for the report, whatever the report's name is? World Meteorological, Hydrological Organization, IUCN, whatever. 4 organizations they'll give off. So again, for prelims perspective, who has made this prediction and who is responsible for this information? The WMO. Okay. What's the prediction? Increase of up to 1.8, 1.1 to 1.8. Now, when you compare all of these and when you compare this to this information that I just told you, one conclusion is that the effort is inadequate. Especially when you consider in that the peak temperature is coming in 2 years. If the peak temperature is coming in 2 years, and if your long-term plan is after 45 years, we are completing in 2070, is it going to be enough? Especially considering the sensitive nature of Indian agriculture. Okay. Why India is a separate target, I'll tell you. Because again, India negotiated its position. If you look at the history of this negotiation, well, the West tried to coerce India essentially. Like they always do. They were like, no, India, you should follow our diktat. Then the Indian side, led by, I think it was Piyush Goyal, I believe. I'm not sure. Some Indian official, okay. He negotiated and said that, well, we have a large population. Our energy demands are huge. Our capital to invest in renewable energy quickly in say this kind of moment is not going to happen. So India has set itself a realistic target, an achievable target that it will do with utmost sincerity. Which is why, like I told you, the Indian Railways green expansion. Massive. In fact, if you consider, no guys, the fact that Indian Railways was able to do it so efficiently in such short amount of time, the long-term consequences of this are immense. Because diesel engines running freight, taking passengers to and fro, imagine the amount of pollution that was coming just per train routing. It was too much. The cost, again, you're dependent on coal. The cost of running the whole operation. Forget your Paris climate agreement and all of that goals. No, forget that. Just the day-to-day cost of running that whole operation is very high. But now that you have electrified it, well, the costs have essentially come down. Imagine burning coal and then now going straight to electricity. Yeah. Taking fuel imports, the fuel bill will come down. If fuel bill comes down, eventually everything's prices will be falling. So many things are linked together. So you need to have these linkages quickly. You should be able to, if I give you one point, you should be able to give me the whole strategy after that. It should come to you naturally. How everything is placed together. It's like a Jenga box. If you take out one, the whole thing will fall apart. Okay. So now with this known to us, let's go forward now. What's the crux? This is the introduction I gave you. Now the crux of the whole matter. What's the crux of the matter? So what does it tell us? The research indicates that investing in agri R&D, okay, in research and development, it yields greater returns than say on fertilizer subsidy, power subsidy, education or roads. Okay. When the long-term implications of research and development are higher, obviously, right? These are all what? Short-term measures. Fertilizer subsidy, short-term measure. Yes? It's not going to help you in the long term. How? Okay. Power subsidy, short-term measure. It's not a structural reform that you are doing. It's a small, it's like papering over the cracks. Rather than repairing the problem, you are just sticking something hoping, okay, we'll deal with it later. Education, yes, it's a long-term thing, obviously. Roads, investment, long-term thing, for sure. But then, what does it say? That if we were to do it on agri R&D, it would be better. It would lead to better returns for us. How? Well, first thing we have to understand is research intensity. Now, what is research intensity? For example, if I give you 100 rupees, okay, that here, take 100 rupees, go and figure out, innovate for me and figure out how can we do, say, X thing better. Okay. Now you go back to your classroom, your lab, and then you figure out, you try to research and innovate and see what can be done, how can that process be made more efficient. You do all of that study. Eventually you come back and you tell me that, you know what, because of my research, we are going to increase the price or decrease the price of this from say 50 to 40. Essentially, in this conversation, research intensity is essentially your amount in research that you put, okay, the kind of, say, the amount in research that you put divided by the amount of returns that you get. Okay, this is research intensity. Again, important for you to know. Why? Because it's a concept that you can write in the mains answer. Showcase your knowledge that you know about this. If you're talking about, say, Indian agricultural prospects. Why? Agriculture is UPSC's favorite topic, firstly. Let's get to that. It should be also, considering the sensitive nature of it. So, this is research intensity. How much money you put in versus how much of it can you derive for market use. So, now what does this say? That the research intensity has reduced. Another term we are introduced to is ARDE. Like I told you, ARDE is essentially to do with agricultural research, okay, development, education and extension. Look at it. This is the whole end-to-end of research in agriculture. That you research about a particular thing, you develop a product, you inform the audience, the agriculturists, the farmers, and thereafter you extend it. Make sure that they have accessibility to that research. Because a research should not just exist on paper. It should actually have practical uses. Okay? So, this is ARDE. Please make sure that you know this. Again, no one knows. There's no method to this madness. Make a note of this. So now what does it tell us? That the RI has reduced, which means we are not doing enough to maintain this particular fraction. Okay, this is compromised. At the same time, if this has been taken care of, I can go forward now. I'll be going forward now. So what is it telling us? Firstly, it's to do with expenditure. Okay, that we are not putting money at the right places. And secondly, now the problem is also with the policy. There's also a policy angle to it. So research in what? Where should you research is important, not just how much should you research is important. So what does this article tell us is that most of the research is happening in, say, agri research. When you compare agri research, most of it is happening in, say, seeds. Most of it. Okay. Whereas, sorry, not seeds, soils. Most of it is happening in soils. That you are investing too much in, say, creating, wait, let me just clean it up first. Wait, 1 second. Let me just go back to this so that I can explain to it properly. Let's not, okay. So agri research, the author says that most of it is being done in terms of seeds. How? We are just focused on making sure that we develop seeds that give us high yield varieties. Again, a short-term measure because you have food requirement. So essentially all of these, Indian Council for Agricultural Research or all of these organizations. Again, you should know where is the ICAR, the Indian Council for Agricultural Research. Again, if you have been to Delhi, if you have been to old Rajendra Nagar, Mukherjee Nagar, considered to be the most holy places for UPSC preparation, well, ICAR is just next door after Rajendra Nagar. In fact, there's an area called Pusa. Okay, you must have seen Pusa. Pusa Arhar and all of these varieties that they bring up. So it's in Pusa, New Delhi. Okay. So coming back. So this research tells us that we are just investing our research in seed management. However, in terms of soil, in terms of fertilizer, in terms of nutrient, all of the other stakeholders, we are not doing enough. So he is essentially saying that there is a bias towards crop husbandry, that all we are doing is seed management in the name of research and development. However, are we doing soil management? Are we making sure that they are resistant to heat? Are we making sure that they are resistant to drought? Are we making sure that our fertilizer requirements go down? Okay. Are we making sure that the nutrient is being taken care of? That is said that no, we are compromising there. That is not happening. So then he goes forward and says, the overall research intensity in agri has fallen short of the 1% target, which is recommended by the Food and Agricultural Organization. Look at it now. Suddenly a new person comes in this conversation. Obviously, Government of India has a target, 1% you should have on the gross value added. Look at it. The value added, research, how much you do versus the returns that you get. So you should be increasing this particular by 1%. That is not happening. Food and Agricultural Organization also says that this return, this proportion should be close to 1%. Not happening. So what we are doing? We are investing firstly in the wrong place, and we are investing also less amount of money. Okay. We are not doing enough to fortify our agriculture for the next, say, 50, 60, 70 years. Thereafter, he says, in the budgets for this, in this ARD, agricultural research, development, education, extension, one needs to realign not just expenditure, but also policies. Like I told you, it's a two-thing problem here. Expenditure also you have to see for your agriculture. Policy also you have to see for your agriculture. So, you have to take a look at first fertilizer subsidy, power subsidy. Can you cut down money from here and invest in research and development? Why? Because it's going to give you greater returns. However, this will be a political issue. You have a set of people who benefit out of this, who are not going to be happy with that decision. So it will require a lot of political will to take this money away and route it here to research and development. Give it in the hands of the scientists and say, you know what, come up with something. Come up with something so that we can take a long-term look at this whole problem. Political issue. So you can write that even though this is true, okay, this is essentially a problem of will. It's the problem of political will. Okay. This is the ideal scenario where you should get rid of this and route that money to research and development. Now going forward. Now with this information in front of you, now that you understand that the problems with Indian agriculture, especially in light of climate change, are twofold. One is policy. The second is expenditure. If this is clear to you, now you should be able to tell me the answer to this question, which is like a mirror image of a mains question that can be asked. So in the face of climate change, there's a need for comprehensive restructuring of both expenditure and government policy if India is to be agriculturally self-reliant, Atmanirbhar. Analyze. What are going to be the key tenets of your answer here? You will begin with the fact that Indian agriculture is small land holdings, all of those routine things that you know, the NCERT bit, and then come to that the problems are twofold. Okay, it's to do with policy, it's to do with agriculture. You are also going to talk about the G7 target, India's target, and India's efforts. What have we done so far? Okay. Once you take this whole outlook and then come to the main body, in the main body write about the policy, that we are not investing enough in ARDE. Use this term, the ARDE. Showcase what research intensity means. Showcase what the FAO has said. If you are to come from there till here, that's a comprehensive answer. 200 words, you get probably 200 to 50 words, whatever to write the answer. Brilliant answer, it will be complete packaged answer. So an article is to be read like that. You are not going to listen to your pravachan only, okay? That is not going to help you in the mains. You are going to make sure every article you can translate into a question and come up with an answer. That's the way forward. Okay, I will use white link. Sorry, I did not get that. Let me just erase it and clear it again for you then. Okay. So, Indian agriculture, the problems of policy and expenditure. Okay, you are going to start with, say, Indian agriculture's small land holding problem, come to the G7, come to India's targets. Okay, talk about their accelerated engagement, India's targets, come to what FAO has said, write about the ARDE, write about research intensity, and then go to this, that these are the problems. This is where Indian agriculture is lacking. So what is the way forward? In the end, probably say that power subsidy, electrical subsidy, okay, all of this has to be taken care of. At the same time, you have to move from a seed-based outlook to a comprehensive outlook that includes research and development for soil, for nutrients, okay, for not just monocropping. Monocropping also should be avoided. All of these, if you are to include in your answer, and if you are to come from that particular point, it's a very good answer. Even if you are given 200 words to write on it, it showcases that you have understood the topic. Okay, right there, what is the definition of ARDE? What does it include? What's research intensity? Okay, that the money you put in versus the benefit that you get out of it. Good answer. Okay, now going forward. So this was the first question. If you were to just quickly look at this now can you tell me in the chat box or the comment box, what would be the answer for this? Well, obviously this is incorrect. This is incorrect. This is incorrect. This is correct. India is the largest workforce amongst the G20 countries, which means how many of the statements above are incorrect? 3 statements. C. Okay. Good answers always are holistic. They give you the macro overlook, yet are specific in examples. That's what is expected of you. Okay. That's your first article from Indian Express in this introductory class of this special series that StudyIQ IAS has come up with. Now, we are going to take a look at this particular problem very quickly. Within 10 minutes, we are going to have a look at this. So, faculty shortages in our universities. This is from the Hindu. And given that education is a problem in India, again a problem for you too, because UPSC loves questions on education reforms, on primary education, middle school education, higher education. You have to be comprehensive in your knowledge about it. What are the issues right from KG level up till PhD level? So today we are talking about universities, which means we are talking about higher education. Okay. So the question before you now, discuss the challenges associated with human resources in education and R&D in India. Suggest corrective measures. What would you do first? First, analyze what are the problems in terms of education and R&D, higher education and R&D. So, can someone tell me what are the problems? One problem that you can think of in higher education. Most of you must be, again, good educated fellows. Yes, you must have friends, family also who are PhDs and MPhils and all of that, big degrees they'll have. However, what is the problem they face? There are I'm sure several families will have several stories. All you need to do is figure out the root cause. So let's look at it now. The problem of human resources in Indian education system. Very quickly we'll take a look. Number one, lack of reliable data on faculty resources. That is root number one problem. Why? If I own a university, okay, if I own a university, it's the onus on me, it's my responsibility to just basically inform the government that, you know what, I have say X number of faculty people in my college, in my university. There is no governmental regulation that mandates that information be shared with the government. It's completely voluntary. Okay. All you need to do is just send them a document claiming I have say 50 faculties. So again, the problem lies with this whole, if you were to look at it as structural problem, well, there is no system in place firstly. There is no structure only. So, lack of reliable data. Why? Now, as a university person, imagine this first. You have to maintain a good student to teacher ratio. Okay. Because again, you need for marketing, for publicity. Look, we have only 30 students and we have one teacher. So we give personal attention, they'll claim. Right? Very good claim. Excellent claim. But one should ask those people that can you tell me how many are permanent faculty out of that? And how many are short-term contractual adjunct faculty as you call it? There's again a problem of ghost faculty. People who exist only on paper but have never turned up to class. This is not a problem that you only find in say the remote villages of Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, MP and all of these states. No, this happens in major cities. Colleges who will claim that, oh, look at it, we maintain a student to teacher ratio of 30:1. Wow. Harvard level. But how many are permanent? How many are qualified? What's their qualification? No information. Number two, adjunct faculty. Why is adjunct faculty used? Now, again, systemic problem. As a university owner, my problem is that I have to drive my costs down. My profit margin should be high. If I have a full-time faculty, I'll have to pay him money. Firstly, monthly salary, insurance, okay, benefits you'll have to give, housing you'll have to give, all of that. How will, oh my God, it'll eat into my money then. So what they are going to do? Hire poor fellows with fishy degrees as adjunct faculty. Okay. 1/10 of the cost. If you are hiring a full-time faculty at ₹1,00,000, this fellow will work for you at 25,000 rupees. 1/4. Okay. So they will improve this student-teacher ratio with these fudged numbers. Thereafter, you have oversupply in some disciplines and in some locations. Why everyone wants to work in the big cities? Most doctors like to work in the big cities now that government has made it mandatory for them that you should serve in village areas first. Huge outcry then. Same thing with teachers. Everyone wants to work near the metros. Positions of convenience, that I shouldn't be too far from our family. But if you have gone into this education field, and if you are a government or if you are just getting into the education field, you should be prepared to work anywhere. It's like an all India service liability. You can't say no. However, this happens. You don't find teachers for many subjects in Northeast. Teachers for, say, various languages are rarely found outside the state. If someone in Delhi wants to, say, learn Tamil, the person has to probably approach the Tamil Sangh or someone, and they will probably depute a teacher. It's very difficult to find a teacher of Tamil easily. Okay. For particular streams that you require, engineering, too many people. Okay. But if you want to study psychology, too less people. Biotechnology, too less people. So this mismatch, okay, supply-demand mismatch exists throughout the country, not just in terms of location, but also in terms of discipline, the kind of subject that you teach. So another problem here. Then inability to hire faculty. Inability is essentially that to hire someone, well, it's a long drawn process. Okay. And you need sanctions also at times. You need particular approvals from places. So they can't do that. The colleges also are hamstrung. Yeah, their hands are also tied. They're not fully at fault. Okay. The process to hire a full-time faculty is cumbersome. It takes time. They don't want to go through all that hassle. And then after that, like I told you, it's not just the inability, but the unwillingness also. That whole thing that, oh, I have to maintain a good student-teacher ratio, so I'll do cost cutting. I'll hire fishy people and just pass off. Make students a complete fool of the students and their parents. I'll claim something very high, but when they come to class, it will be someone who does not know how to teach also. Forget teaching, someone who will not know their subject only. So what's the point? Okay. Thereafter, you have problem of reservations and discrimination. Okay. You have discrimination when it comes to the disadvantaged castes, disadvantaged people. They are not given, say, preference of choice. There's also quality issues that are involved. All of this put together, including this whole thing that PhDs are abundant, but then how good are they? Are they good enough is the question. That raises a big question on the organizations that push out these PhD people. Yeah, so many X amount of people getting PhDs in a year. But when you compare it qualitatively to, say, a Western PhD, there's a lot of difference. Okay. Similarly, if you just compare Indian engineers from, say, the middle colleges versus, say, the engineers from the middle colleges of that side, there's a lot of difference of skill. It's not just to do with education, it's to do with how education is consumed. Rote learning is encouraged here. Innovation is encouraged there. So obviously the kind of people who will graduate will be two different thoughts, which will eventually, when they enter the market, it will play out. It will showcase in the way they work. That's also a problem there. So this is why our Indian education, especially higher education, is hamstrung. Especially when you consider the human resources problems. The human aspect of it. Underfunding. Human aspect. If an institution is not given money to sustain itself, well, can you just only blame the college administration, the university administration? No. They also have a budget to work with. What can they do? So all of this put together has essentially led to the point where there is a crisis of credibility for the Indian higher education system. Okay. Our primary education, well, we have done well with RTE so far. Now the thrust is on higher education. Predictably so. You just don't want students who are proficient in, say, the primary languages, but actually people who can go and contribute to the economy. Okay. 1 trillion economy is just not going to come on the basis of, say, 5 or 10 business houses. It has to come from all of us. So which is why there needs to be a change from the grassroots itself. Empowerment of education, of health, of nutrition, of access to money, all of this is important if India wants to become a $1 trillion economy. Which is why this needs to be addressed, because you're talking about education. Education is directly linked to the outcome capability of an individual. If an Indian person is not educated enough, how are they going to compete? Okay. Just to digress, and before I finish this class now, because I've run out of time, but just to digress, if you look at comparatively, just understand this. In China, okay, China invests, say, 100 rupees on Indian studies. India on China studies invests less than 10 rupees. So they know more about us than we know about them. This whole Sun Tzu concept of know thy enemy, you must have read it now in Sun Tzu. This is the book of the Chinese. Yeah, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. This is a Chinese author who's written it. He says, know thy enemy. Know your enemy. Well, the Chinese are doing a damn good job of it. They know much about us than we know about them. Why? Because we refuse to address our education system. We refuse to address the grassroots problem. Okay? This is important. All right. Thanks, Adil. I will. Hopefully, in the near future, someday. Okay. All right. So, with that, we come to the end of this introductory class on this daily newspaper series that StudyIQ IAS is beginning today. Tomorrow onwards, we will look to complete at least 5 articles. Today, I started with just 2 because I wanted to introduce the class to you and basically make sure that you note of it. Join me every morning around 9 a.m. 9 a.m. is confirmed, Monday to Saturday. And Sunday's newspaper will be taken care of on Monday morning. And if you did like this class, if it was of help to you, please may I request you, just leave me a like or a comment. I'd really appreciate it. Okay? Okay, guys. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Till then, have a good day and study well.